7 years have finally passed after the first season of The Boys, and now we are finally here in 2026 with the final season of The Boys, and we got the finale today. And all I can say right now, with a shadow of a doubt in my mind, this finale is nothing short of underwhelming. So you know what we gotta do today, you know what we do on this channel, we gotta rewrite this underwhelming season as best as we can. But before I do any of the rewrites, we're gonna do a little bit of a different format like I did with the last video I did with the Stranger Things season. I am going to do a little bit of a review of the series in its entirety in the first half of the video, and in the last half, that's all of the changes I would do to the season to make it 10 times more enjoyable from my perspective. So first things first, the best episode in this entire season is definitely the finale, and that is not a compliment, because you would think that the best episode would most likely be somewhere in the middle or a little bit before the other episodes before we get to the finale. The finale is supposed to be the climax and the conclusion of everything. It's supposed to be tying everything up in a nice little bow, because even like shows like Avatar: The Last Airbender, some of the best episodes are nowhere close to finale. Like prime example, the episodes of the Tales of Ba Sing Se. Those are some of the best episodes in the entire series without them including even the main cast. Some of the other side characters got a little bit more of a shine. But despite me saying that, and I'm going to sound like a little bit of a hypocrite, the worst episode in my personal opinion is between One Shots, which is episode 5, or King of Hell, which is episode 4. And people might be wondering, well, how is that the worst episode? Because One Shots doesn't exactly do anything major to the overarching plot. And no, I don't mean that it was filler, I mean that this is an episode that shouldn't exist in the final season personally. It should have existed in like season 3 or season 4, where if they wanted to add a lot more credence and backstory to a lot of these characters, despite us having a lot of backstory already for some of them, it shouldn't really be here, because all of the plot lines and all the information that we got in One Shots, the only viable information we got for was for a Firecracker, and that episode is more of a build up towards her character being killed at the latter end of that episode because Homelander doesn't believe that she's a true believer in his mission. A lot of the characters don't really change in this season because, you know, Huey's still doing Huey stuff, Butcher is still doing Butcher stuff, and I get it, you know, you don't want them to change that drastically, but I thought that they were leading to something in this season, especially with the end of season 4 when, you know, Butcher pulls up and decides to rip Victoria Newman in half. I'm thinking that Butcher's going on a more darker path. You would think that he's going to do this whole scorched earth, the very thing that he's been saying for the majority of the series, this scorched earth persona for this season. They kept building up the idea that like, oh, they're all gonna go too far this time, the villains are gonna do the worst things possible, and the heroes are gonna have to decide if they're gonna go down that dark path, and it doesn't really feel like they did anything different compared to any previous seasons. Other characters, I feel like they had more plot lines for the major threat that they have, because keep in mind, Mother's Milk had this palpable vendetta against Soulja Boy, so part of his character arc is actually getting revenge for the people that he killed in his family. But that kind of just went out the window because the second to last episode, Soulja Boy gets choked out. They said screw Mother Milk's plan, and I was giving them, you know, the benefit of the doubt. I was hoping that maybe he'll break out in the finale episode, maybe he actually finds a way to escape the box, but no, he goes back into the box. We took him out of the box in season 3 or 4 or whatever. He goes back into the box at the end of that said season. We bring him back out in the beginning of season 5, and now we put him back in the box at the end of season 5. Why does he keep going in and out of the box? And we don't even know when he's going to come back in the series except for Vought Rising, which is something that I never really understood, because the first, I guess, 3 or 4 episodes, there's a lot of bolstering for the Vought Rising backstories, because you're learning about people like Bombsight, all of these previous characters that were involved in Soulja Boy's old platoons, and people he hated, people that he loved, which I thought we got a little bit more of that in like season 3 or season 4, where we introduced, you know, Crimson Countess, but I guess Crimson Countess doesn't count anymore. I don't know, dude. The Starlight father backstory was one of the most random aspects of the series. Like, I don't know why they didn't do that in the middle of the whole Starlight versus Homelanders riots, where it feels like that would be a lot more pivotal because it would include the general public and Vought, so I'm not surprised if it leaks into her families and all those different things. But apparently that had to come into the final season where we have this, redemption arc for the father because he decides not to give up Annie to one of their neighbors because he wants to protect their family from Homelander. I don't know. Like, that plot line didn't really do anything for me. It literally was completely forgotten. Like, I don't remember it. But one of the worst things they've done, and I'm going to harp on this for till the day I die. They literally character assassinated Sage even worse than they ever did in this entire series. I thought that they might give her so much of a saving grace in the final episode, but they literally turned her into a bumbling idiot, like a literal idiot. Because guess what? Kimiko now has the anti-suit beam that Soldier Boy has, so they were testing it out on Sage essentially, because she purposely said some very hurtful words to Kimiko because of Frenchie's death to make her get pissed off, to blast her, and of course when she gets blasted she loses her powers. But instead of her becoming, I don't know, like a normal human being, she basically becomes a literal idiot. Like, all of the knowledge that she had up to that point just vanishes, and she becomes cuter and adorable. Don't get me wrong, the actress is cute and adorable, she looks whatever, I love it, but from a character standpoint she literally just loses every ounce of her knowledge, and I'm like, why does she become a dumbass? Like, why? They literally took all of the criticisms of Sister Sage and all of the public and purposely made her dumb. Like, that's actually insane. The Deep's death is predictable. Like, I honestly understand why they made Annie do it, but I felt like there should have been a bit more of an action fight because the Deep has reasons to hate Annie. But I don't know, like, there's so much stuff that this season did that literally undermined so many characters, plot lines. Like, they even abandoned one singular plot line in the series, but that's what I'm going to talk about in the rewrite. So at this point in time, we are now going to jump into the rewrite section of the episode, because the first part of me is just ranting about this season, but this is more cohesive thoughts on how I would change the seasons 5 of The Boys. A-Train should have never died in episode 1. A lot of people like to talk about the redemption of A-Train, and I actually do like the redemption arc of A-Train, my boy Wizza. But the very problem of him dying in the very beginning, it shows that ever since the ending of Gen V Season 2, he still had some reservation against fighting against Homelander. But we all understood with him joining the Resistance that he was taking the path against fighting against Homelander. But that became a plot line that just gets resolved in the very beginning. He doesn't even get to survive long enough to feel the full brunt of that entire decision. I believe that he should have had something going on with the Gen V characters. Make it be like that he's running around with them throughout the season doing different missions that Annie or the boys are giving them to do, like doing something with the virus. I'm going to talk about the virus in a sec, but the virus plotline I feel like should have never been completely abandoned at all. But I personally believe that A-Train should have died. I would have never not make him die. I wished he would have died protecting against the boys or protecting Gen V characters, or like in the series where he's protecting against a group of civilians. Hell, it would be even 10 times more impactful that if Homelander actually killed A-Train in front of a group of spectators that happened to just be around who happened to be Homelander fans. That would actually make a massive dent into Homelander's perception already. And of course, I would still have him laugh in his face, because him laughing in his face and telling him he's nothing more than a worthless piece of crap is actually even more impactful to the story. I want it to be a thing where when Homelander is facing off characters that he's willing to keep alive because they were not afraid of him, to actually feel genuine pain killing these different characters. Because at this point, him killing people that are afraid of him doesn't do anything anymore. But if anything, I feel like A-Train should have died like in the middle of the season, maybe like episode 5 or episode 6, because that would mean that there's genuine loss building up to the end of the series. Because after the first 4 episodes, you should be bolstering, making the heroes feel like that they have a genuine chance, and then rip it away around like episode 5 or 6, where they're starting to see they're losing people in their ranks, whether A-Train dies like outside of their ranks, and then it goes closer and closer to their main cast. Which brings me to my next point. The Gen V character should have a much bigger influence for this season. At the end of the final season, we only get one additional Gen V character, which is Emma, one of my faves, and all she does is say her, witty one-liners, and they run away to Canada, which is one of the most annoying things that I could see. I never wanted them to be characters that had this overwhelming ability to just, I don't know, take down everyone in their sight, but they should have been included in some of these missions because they have been teased since Gen V Season 2. We were expecting them to be having a bigger influence in the decisions that they have. Like, they could have had episodes where they had one-off of the Gen V characters helping out on one mission for whatever they need to help out with, but they just never were included, and we just don't hear anything from Sam or the other girl. I forgot her name, I'm sorry. Like, what? If it were up to me, they would show up in episodes 3 or 4, maybe even also in episode 6, helping out with some of the missions they were going for, trying to find bombs or try to deal with the stone soup. I forgot his name, that big ugly dude that has like the lava powers, which is really gross. Like, they could have helped in those decisions and help show that they're actually involved in the story. Also, they would show up in the finale, in the final fight with Homelander, and they would actually be assisting in that battle. And of course, I wouldn't include any of that baloney that Maureen Moreau doesn't know how to use her powers. Like, that's the whole thing that was happening in season 2. Like, she knows how to control her powers. That was the whole premise of that season. She might actually be a viable person in the fight against the psychics. Maybe like when she's in a close enough proximity, especially if they don't know where she is, she could probably, I don't know, use blood bending to like turn off their powers or, lobotomize these characters from a distance. Like, that's how strong she was. She could have been a very useful character in that degree to help break down the barriers of Homelander's security. Which leads me to the next point, which is Soulja Boy. This is probably the most disappointing storyline that happened in the season, which is Soulja Boy. Soulja Boy has become nothing more than a wisecracking bastard in this season. Like, he doesn't have any story to tell. He just coincidentally happens to be falling in love with Stormfront also, and he has this little bit of a beef with Homelander, and the only reason why he's going against Homelander because he just thinks he's weird, which doesn't do anything. Like, that doesn't add anything to his character whatsoever. Like, yeah, him thinking he's weird is fine, but like, to a degree, why not add a little bit more clarification for why he doesn't want to be around Homelander? Because in season 3, to a degree, you would think like, okay, yeah, he doesn't like Homelander because he betrayed him. Like, he was one of the people who fought against Homelander, and he saw him as nothing more than a sniveling weakling. He didn't perceive him as a strong character. So I would have preferred that he becomes somewhat of like a, I don't know, temporary ally for the boys in the final season. Like, he doesn't exactly do anything against Homelander. He kind of just goes along with him for the most part in the seasons. But as Homelander starts doing the whole thing, like, let's say we decide to keep the timeline or storyline that Homelander wants to stay and be God, he wants to decide to, let me not mess with this guy anymore. I do not like the path that he's going. I think it's weird, whatever the case may be. And then he decides to betray Homelander at the latter end of the episodes because he doesn't want to be around the dude who's doing all this nonsense. So that way we don't have to deal with the wasted time of Frenchie trying to figure out how to irradiate Kimiko to give her Soulja Boy's powers, which also doesn't really make sense because keep in mind, I believe in the story it is stated that Soulja Boy was tortured for years and was constantly being experimented on for a long period of time. So they just coincidentally able to speed up the entire process in a small room, and Kimiko just coincidentally happens to get Soulja Boy's powers, the anti-super ray. Like, bro, I can't. I'm sorry. And imagine in the finale where it's even more impactful when he figures out that Soulja Boy and Sister Sage, because I'm going to include Sister Sage in this section. Imagine if Sister Sage actually knows how to create the V1 formula. Let's say they never find it. They can't find it. Bombsight has it, but he destroys it. So they try to kill Bombsight, but they can't kill him, and he escapes with his girl. And Sister Sage actually replicates the V1, but she's purposely stalling. Like, it makes sense that she would purposely stall the process of creating the V1. She tells Soulja Boy and her kind of have this little pseudo alliance with each other. And in the final episode, they become very key factors in why Homelander becomes powerless. Because mind you, you can actually keep the motivation that Sister Sage only wants to be left alone and doesn't want to stick with the planet, which I feel like is still a very dumb motivation for her to have. But at least if that was the motivation, if she actually helps to take down Homelander and she's one of those big key factors, guess what? When the whole thing is over, she doesn't have to be involved. Homelander's dead. She can screw off to wherever she wants to go, eat as much Taco Bell as she wants, and then Soulja Boy can go wherever he pleases because he has no interest in doing anything further. Which brings me to my next point. The V1 should never have been a viable option in this series. V1 is something that has been told that like, okay, Soulja Boy is one of the strongest soups out there because this is the original V formula. So we understand why he's so strong, and I can understand why they want to introduce that to Homelander so that way he can be perceived as the strongest soup out there, so that way when he gets maximum power, he is not only feared but he's also loved. The only thing is, the very moment that Homelander gets V1 in the second to last episode, he does absolutely nothing. He doesn't even hunt down the boys frame one. Like, he has super hearing, super sight, all these different abilities, and yet despite getting one of the original forms of V and gets a massive power boost, he's going to be more powerful. Homelander is as strong as there is, and he still can't see through zinc. What?
Huh? No cap on God, bro.
Homelander doesn't even look like or feel like he had an increase in power. You would think that someone like Homelander would get like a different reaction to V1 because he already has V in his veins. With Soulja Boy, he was a nobody, got hit with the V, and then he became Soulja Boy. Homelander was already Homelander. Why wouldn't he be, I don't know, buffed in some capacity? Why is he not slightly faster? Why is his beams not ripping through people easier, even the average soup? Like, why does he not look and feel like 10 times more menacing than he actually is? The only time he actually gets 10 times more menacing a little bit is when he kills Frenchie, but he already had these abilities before he got the V1. The V1 became some kind of pseudo arbiter of tension, saying like, oh hey, we have this now formula that's going to make the main villain 10 times more powerful and 10 times more scary, but he doesn't change. He doesn't even look or feel or tries to does anything. He doesn't even get a new ability or power. Like, it would have been cool if they showed that he got more abilities or different abilities because of him activating the V1, but we don't even get that. And even better, what if he got the V1 again in the middle of the season? If you got it in the middle of the season, that means, guess what? They have to make a completely different plan, work with more characters, make sure they have a bigger army to fight against Homelander. And it would be 10 times more impactful that in the final episode, Homelander is alone in the Oval Office with nobody around him, not in like broad daylight, like it's in the dead of night, and he's surrounded by every character who he screwed over that are still alive, that they want to bring him down into the dirt. Because at that point, at least, if characters die in that final episode, especially since he's stronger, they know good and well that they are preparing to die against Homelander. Which brings me to my next point. I do not believe that Homelander's main goal should have been trying to become the quote-unquote new god. Now, I am a slight bit biased, so I am going to put that out there right now because I do have a little bit of a Christian background, but I am willing to look past that for this show. And as much as I didn't really like the fact that they're trying to make Homelander try to replace himself with Jesus and all this different stuff, it doesn't fit his character whatsoever. Like, yes, I get it. The whole point is that he's trying to equate himself to someone like Jesus because a lot of people unapologetically, without any fault, love Jesus and love God in the Christian faith. So he believes that if he replaces himself and tries to perceive himself as someone who was chosen by Jesus to be the second coming of God, while at the same time being the first coming of God, that people will start to unapologetically love him without any fault. Which doesn't really work. I mean, I get it, he's supposed to have this man, baby, child persona, but even he is aware that people fear him, and to a degree he can understand why people fear him because he's this powerful being and he's scary, but he doesn't see himself as this scary being for whatever reason. But I would have liked the idea of adding the thought, maybe even in season 3 or season 4, why does he not mix in the persona of trying to save people? Because keep in mind, he did that with Ryan in I think season 4, where he's purposely showing Ryan, oh yeah, you have to pretend to save people, you have to save people, all this different stuff. So he was trying to keep up the hero persona. But in this season, he kind of completely abandons it. Like, people to a degree see Homelander still as a superhero, but since the audience has been completely really removed from this season, which is probably one of the biggest faults of this season also, is that we don't see people's perception change. Like, it would have been cool to see somewhere in the beginning or around episode 3 or 4 where you get to see the perspective that everyone does not see Homelander as a hero, does not see him as this red, white, and blue loving hero that they've seen for like the last few seasons. Because keep in mind, remember when we had the Starlighters versus the Homelanders? Where did that go? That kind of just vanished in the background. But instead I get two characters sniffing each other's butts, which I don't understand why that's even there. Which brings me to another point. And this is more of a change on the tone of the show based on the jokes and other stuff that they've done. The show is no longer satire. The comedy has flattened. In my personal opinion, as much as I understand that that was the whole premise of the show, the gore and the attacks of the show was supposed to mimic the comic books a lot, which is fine, I get that. But a lot of the heavily sexual jokes and a lot of these egregious, horrible jokes that they've been making throughout the season don't feel like they hit anymore. All of the shock value that happened all in previous season is now gone. Anything you do in this season doesn't surprise me anymore. All the dialogue that other characters do don't make any sense, but then it doesn't really matter. Like, for whatever reason, every other soup that they run into that happens to be there for like a one-time deal, like the rock soup I talked about before, for whatever reason they're conveniently a sex pest, for whatever reason. And I know there's a lot of other jokes out there that's supposed to be political satires or allegories to real life parallels. Like, I believe the showrunner Kripke says that he's not exactly the biggest fan of the president right now, which I'm not going to talk about that, but in essence, I can understand you wanting to make jokes about real life scenarios because of current times, which is possible. That's fine, you can do that. But the issue is that it kind of takes away from the entire story because it happens a lot more than it really should. Even in the final episode after Frenchie's death, they had to throw in like, oh, his last will and testament, and there's a lot of a-hole jokes involved, like in the very first beginning of the episode. Like, it's not even really funny. Like, I get it, they're trying to play it off as funny, but it doesn't feel funny. Like, one of our beloved characters, one of the characters that we liked up to this point, one of my favorite characters is Frenchie. When he died in the previous episode, as much as I called that episode probably the best episode, even though it's objectively maybe like the third or fourth worst, I personally liked it because I'm like, oh, I liked Frenchie, so killing him and him having this moment with Kimiko was, you know, adorable. I liked it. It pulled on my heartstrings just a little bit because I like Frenchie. But why in the very beginning of this episode am I getting a lot of butt jokes relating to Frenchie? Why am I getting that? Like, I didn't ask for that. Like, if it was up to me, I would make it a little bit fewer and in between. Like, when they're trying to learn more information, like when they went to the retirement home and they found that dude who happens to have the powers where his gonads stretch down, that's funny to me. Because throughout that episode, we didn't really get that many jokes, and I thought that was cool. But then I also didn't like the fact that we got bro. I forgot the other bro's name. I already forgot his character's name, honestly. But the guy that showed up before, who only makes jokes constantly where he talks about every other super that he's screwed. And I'm like, come on, dude. Like, I don't need this dialogue in my head. Like, come on. Black Noir and Deep should have died a long time ago in this season. I do not care for Black Noir and Deep whatsoever. If it were up to me personally, I would have killed off Deep by episode 3 or episode 4. Same thing with Black Noir, or have Black Noir join the boys, because he seemed like a character that literally didn't care about being a superhero. And the only reason why he was created and put into the screen in the first place because the original Black Noir was killed and Vought hired him to make it look like that they did not lose a member of the Seven, because the perception of the Seven still being alive and well is more important. But Stan Edgar and all these other characters don't matter anymore at this point in time, so why is he even still here? The entire purpose of his character has kind of just been wiped clean. If it were up to me, I would just make it where Black Noir at some point learns of all the atrocities of all the other characters, whether through the Deep or other characters. Maybe he learns about the backstory of the Deep, all the horrible things he did back in season 1, 2, to other soups, to other women, you know, all these different things. And then he turns against the Deep because of the information that he learned. And then the Deep becomes frustrated because, I thought I was free from all this information. I thought I was free from all these cancellations. And then they can fight each other, but the Deep doesn't kill him. I thought that was one of the dumbest scenes in this entire show. They have a small beef with each other. The Deep kills one of the people that gives him the dream that he ever wanted. Black Noir commits a fish genocide, which is wild. I feel like that's a massive escalation. And he doesn't expect the Deep to decide to kill him in some capacity or throw hands at minimum? No. They both should have been dead ages ago. And the fact that the Deep survived the entirety of the season without dying, even at least in the beginning of the season, is wild to me. The Deep should have died like episode 3. I'm sorry. Ryan should have a bigger role in this season. Ryan is a character that I wanted to like when he got first introduced, I think in season 3, when we realized that Becca was still alive and we learned all of the backstory for how she became pregnant and all these different things. I wanted Ryan to be kind of like the boy's equivalent to Superboy or Superman, you know? He sees the horrible things that Butcher and Soldier Boy and Homelander are doing, and because he's one of the first and only characters that has a natural born superpowers, that he has no V in his blood, he's one of the first superheroes that has no V in his blood, I feel like it would have been great to make him become someone who rises against all of the evil in the boys universe. And he actually joins the boys, and like they did in this season, they actually did something that I liked for his character. He doesn't stay with Butcher. He decides to actually run away from Butcher. He says like, look, I did not come and help you against the fight with Butcher just because I was choosing you over him. Both of you are horrible human beings. I do not want to deal with any of you. I just wanted to do it so I can stop him, which fits his character, honestly. So if it were up to me, I would make it that maybe he got a little bit of training from some of the Gen V characters, because he knows about the other girl, like Stan Edgar's granddaughter or something, which I don't understand why they had like a little bit of a love interest thing with them, which only lasted one episode because she effed off with her dad somewhere, so she never showed up again in the season, so I don't know what that was all about at all. But make him, I don't know, communicate with characters like A-Train, make him want to actually believe in becoming a hero and actually decides to go down that route. But he doesn't want to become like a public hero. He does like his own thing, using his powers for good. And of course, in the final fight, he's one of the main people, along with Butcher and the boys, to fight against Homelander as one of the main reasons why they win. Now, granted, they did do that in this season, so I'll give him credit there. But he didn't really do that much. He kind of got ragdolled and got duffed in the very beginning of the fight. Make past soups that betrayed Homelander before come back for the final season. I personally wanted to see someone like Queen Maeve to come back and actually show up maybe in the second to last or third to last episode, helping against the fight against Homelander. You know, maybe she fight against some soups that joined Homelander, which is another thing that I want to include. I'm going to include it in this section right here. There should have been more soups that should have been on Homelander's side. Make him have his own army of soups. Because keep in mind, Vought has been one of the main arbiters of everything ever since season 1. And Vaught's influence just completely disappeared. So I don't understand why they didn't include other soups that could have, I don't know, fought alongside Homelander because they fear him and they want to quote unquote believe in him, outside of Church Screaming Man, which, mind you, his death is completely dumb. Like, his death is beyond dumb. Like, bro didn't even get a chance to actually have a winning fight. All he does is scream into a toy that Ashley bought for him for their escapades, and he screams into it and his head explodes. And I'm sitting here thinking, wasn't that made for them to enjoy themselves at some point in time? So why does it kill him? Why doesn't it just, I don't know, silence him and then they just bound his arms? Because his main superpower is screaming. He's a black canary. So just put the toy on him and then just literally leave him alone. He does nothing else, and then you can kill him either way. But his death was just dumb. I'm sorry. But just like how they recruited the Gen V characters, they should have expanded their invitations to other soups. They already turned A-Train and they kind of pseudo changed Ashley because she didn't want to work with Homelander anymore. And I don't know why she waited until the very last second when they're being attacked by a random soup trap, which includes something which I just realized. They literally introduced an anti-soup weapon that can be used. The sound thing. They have like Viltrumite weakness. Why was that not figured out at some point? Why was that not used against other soups? Why was that not used against Homelander when he didn't have the V1 or any other thing? Did they ever realize at how many weaknesses that they have? What? Hello? I don't know. I'm going to move on to the next point because I can rant and rave about so many different things that they have done so poorly in this season. But the last thing that I would like to say, this is more of like a change that actually resembles the comics, but I would shift it a little bit. Butcher betraying the boys and actually trying to fight against them. One of the things that happens in the comics is that Butcher, despite them killing Homelander, actually still wants to release the soup virus that they have. Now, the soup virus, I feel like is a very important component of the story that I wish they didn't abandon in random points in the season. I wish they'd actually added to it. Maybe they figure out a way to make a stronger version for people who have V1 in their blood. I don't know, like figure something out before they decided to remove Sister Sage's powers. Like, still dumb. But the one thing that I would have loved to see is that they make it clear that even though that Butcher wanted to stop Homelander, and they did it, and he still cares about the boys, but he still has a deep-seated hatred for Soups. So what does he do? At the very end, when Homelander is beaten and everything is stopped, he either uses his powers or even, and this is more of like a controversial take, he kills one of the Souped boys. So he kills Annie, or he kills Kimiko, or he kills both. And he decides to go against the boys at the very last second. And he talks to them, tells them everything. They have their old heart-to-hearts, but the boys win. Instead of killing off all of them, or maybe he kills off at minimum Huey. I'll probably make it that he kills Huey. Because if he kills Annie, I'll make him kill Huey. If he kills Kimiko, then Frenchie can die also. I personally don't see any point in killing MM, especially if he still has beef with Soulja Boy. But I would 100% go with the storyline that he actually goes off the deep end, and they have to kill Butcher in order for him to prevent from releasing the soup virus. And in the process of doing so, they maybe have some form of initiative that's enacted. Maybe even, because I did write this note down, but I don't know if I actually like this idea, make it that Sister Sage actually has a bigger role of taking over Vought instead of Stan Edgar. She decides to actually do something where they have, I don't know, an anti-soup initiative. So if a soup does enough heinous crimes, they can be put on trial or something like that. And then the soup virus is used to kill the soup instead of, any other average person, and it's used as some form of death penalty. Hell, you could even play around with the idea that the Deep survives and he is used as an example for that initiative being used. I wouldn't mind that idea. Him dying to fish is just way too ironic. I get it. It was like written in the stars since like season 2. Like, I'm sorry. I don't know, there are so many changes that I would do to just even the final season alone, and that would include changing things that happens in season 2, in season 3, in season 4, even in season 1 a little bit. But for the most part, I wanted like a lot of these changes to happen in like season 4 to season 5. And this is a very rough idea. I have so many notes written down, but this video would end up being an hour long. So I might do another video breaking down all of the other changes I would do for the boys finale. But let me know what you guys feel about all these changes I talked about for the finale. Tell me your thoughts on the season. Did you guys like it? Did you think it could have been better? Do you think it could have been worse? And at this point in time, despite all of the character assassinations, who's your favorite character? Also, don't forget to like the video if you really like videos like this. And also don't forget to subscribe. It's your boy Kadukun. I'll see you guys next time, and peace.
FMA, handle business, don't play. On point when it comes to the anime. Jack and Daxter, ayy, let's go. The ultimate heroes, don't stop, we on the road. Kadukun, Kadukun, yeah, welcome to the channel.